Well, in one sense, we won the war. I think every major corporation has got a lean program. In the other sense, we've only scratched the surface, in that not very many of those companies are really deeply developing the capabilities of their people to do problem solving in the Toyota sense. So we still have a long way to go before people truly understand and truly act the way Toyota does.
We succeeded in creating a whole new set of functions, and those are called OpEx, or some variant. And I think the big thing is, as Dennis said, that everybody's got one of those. And the consequence is that most management decided they could outsource lean, that we could delegate it to someone. Please go do it, and here's your budget. And please get some results. We won't be too precise about that. And now I will be on to the next issue. And of course, that is unlikely to produce much of a result. And it doesn't produce nothing. I'm sometimes surprised that it doesn't produce nothing. It produces something. But it doesn't produce what we had intended, which was that this would become the core way that managers think about how to define what's important, about how to deploy on things that are opportunities, about how to countermeasure problems, about how to get stability in the organization. That's what we had in mind, what we got. Hey, it's everywhere. That's good. It's better than nothing, but it's not as good as it needs to be. Biggest thing we have going for us is that none of the problems go away. If the problems would just go away, well, then lean could go away with who would care. But in fact, the problems don't go away. And the current moment of lean is really part of a long progression that goes way, way back in history of people trying to figure out how to work together more effectively to create value. And so at this moment in time, we have a sort of a lean is the way moment. Would that go away simply to be replaced by something totally different? No, but it might go away to be replaced by something that has a different name, but is in fact still addressing the same issues. So I'm not worried that humans are going to stop worrying about how to create more value with less of every sort of resource. And I don't care what they call it, but I am worried that our rate of progress is not equal. And in some ways, Muda, Mura, Muri are all gaining on us in a world of stagnant economies and where the political discourse is about totally external issues to actual people creating value. It's all outside the box, and what's inside the box, how people actually work to create value, which should be transparent, open, and understood by everyone, is for most managers actually still a black box. So we need to light up that box. But I think lean, if not by that name, is going to be around for a long, long time.
Well, the first response to globalization was actually to outsource and go to foreign countries for cheaper labor and so on. And that wasn't lean at all. That's actually created more problems. But it gave the world a boost, absolutely, because the product costs fell. Now, as we've entered into a world of stagnation, and looks like it's going to be stagnant for a very long time, then people are beginning to realize that actually simply outsourcing or doing other easy tricks isn't going to do it. And so actually, I think we're beginning to see a second wave of interest in lean in quite unexpected quarters, where the realization is clear that things are going to be, we're going to have to learn to do the same or more with less resource. And I'm thinking particularly of things like healthcare, but I'm also thinking of renewing our infrastructure and transport systems and water systems and so on. Renewing the infrastructure of our societies. It's not just going to be solved by spreading cables. there's a realization that it's not anymore just about the kind of nuts and bolts of the shop floor, which is extremely important, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But actually, a lot of the critical constraints on really acting differently is at management level. And so it's the management, it's the whole business model of how people cooperate with each other that is increasingly coming into focus as an obstacle to doing more with less resource in the future. Because the world of increasing resource, at least for the public sector, is over.
Most companies, when they start, maybe all companies when they start, from an operational standpoint, are lean. There's 1, 2, 3 people, there's no organizational problem. There's a clear leader, has a clear concept. The issue about starting up is whether you actually look at the alternatives and you do rapid testing. You want to fail quickly, cheap, so that you can quickly winnow out the false paths, and there are always lots of false paths, and find the true path. So that's the issue for the startup movement, is how to do that. Once you get started, you have a different question, which is how do you avoid becoming the sclerotic mass production kind of organization that will just naturally happen. I was reading in the media today who it is and what it is, not relevant, but the founder just got kicked out in a company with lots of rich people investing in it, and the reason simply was that the founder could not go from the original idea, which turns out to be quite a good idea, to actually scaling it into a real business. And that happens pretty often. So we need to have a method for getting from brilliant idea that's now been proved to a brilliant organization that can fully, totally exploit that idea. And then finally, it turns out that all organizations, as they grow, are going to discover that some things they're doing have just run out of energy. And so they're going to need to start over. And that's not the whole organization, but it's really with every new generation of product. And we've really squandered the opportunity every time there's a new generation of product to actually act as if it's a startup. And what we do instead is just, in the context of the old mature organization, we try to do new things, which is why old mature organizations don't do a good job of innovating. So there's a leap there of saying, well, wait a minute, if this is something new, then we can't do it in the context of something old. And that, I think, is a real opportunity space for the lean movement to explain how it might be different.
Well, I think two things are changing very significantly. Not only the technical capabilities of sharing information and making things transparent very quickly and in real time. That's the baseline. The other is that that customers are becoming increasingly able to be as informed or even more informed as you are, and they're more demanding, and they can see transparently what the situation is and what the competition is. So much more demanding customers that need to be integrated into the development process. And also, I think a new generation of employees that isn't going to be willing to work in the same command and control infrastructure, but wants to do meaningful work and wants to see a contribution and wants to have a lifestyle balance of lifestyle and so on. So those things are of themselves going to demand that we rethink the way we collaborate in order to deliver these streams. You're absolutely right. I see in industries that were very project-focused, like construction and like software, a big move away from the project management structure with all of the negotiating that goes on throughout the project and defining it and arguing about it afterwards, to actually thinking about a stream of work maybe for several customers of several generations, but nevertheless thinking about the development and delivery and support for the results of that delivery stream as a stream. And I think that we're seeing most activities now being organized in streams, And the question is, well, how do we, in a much more transparent environment, how do we work together to more effectively overcome the traditional vertical power structure of organizations, and really focus on supporting the front line that actually delivers the value. So we heard a lot today about turning reporting structures, which is particularly vertical structures, into supporting structures, and recognition that actually the organization largely exists to support the learning of the front line and the people directly connected and supporting the front line to enable them to do their job better and to improve the process. So actually the fundamental differential of Lean is that it's actually about not just solving today's problems, but learning deeper skills to stabilize and improve the work tomorrow and solving tomorrow problems. So learning is at the core of the organization design of the future. And I think we're going to see some very interesting experiments over the next few years as some of the startups grow and do rethink organizations and do come up with different ways of addressing the key things that build a learning organization. So it's going to be very interesting. And my guess is that Lean has a lot to contribute in terms of thinking through the issues about how do you manage a horizontal process-focused activity. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've made a little bit of progress in a lot of places. So the future, if we have a future, but let's be optimistic and say we do, we've got to deepen our foundation in all of those places. That we have, and Dan and I have worked very hard to introduce these ideas in every industry, in every function, in product development, and operations, of course, and in supplier management, customer support. So every industry, every function, every country, every region. So we've been running a missionary society, and I think we've been as good of missionaries as we could be. That's what I think. We've been as good as we could be. Whether we've been good, that's another question. We've done our best. But now what we've got is a lot of seed out there that has been sown, but it's unclear how much of that can really grow up. And then we're talking about supporting rather than reporting. In our movement, we've been pretty good about reporting. We hear lots of optimistic reports all the time. But actually, we're much weaker at finding ways to support. Mm-hmm. Now, let me get to the next generation. This is the world. Full of smart young people. This is a good thing. I'm glad the world is full of smart young people. But their expectation actually is they are going to be supported rather than going to be controlled. And you see it everywhere. And there are all kinds of mechanisms for support that come out of social media and other communication methods that simply didn't exist. And those could attempt to turn those into mechanisms of control and of reporting. Whereas the intent of those mechanisms is actually, although people maybe don't think about it quite that way yet, but it's actually to support. So how can we, as part of a Lean community, find a way to support those who are doing the real value creation, rather than the old way of just getting a lot of reports, some not very accurate, because we demanded reports. So we've got some learning to do there.
I think I'm very optimistic about the contribution Lean can make to a digital age, and I'm doing my bit to try and get my head around reflections on what we've learnt and implications for thinking about organizations, thinking about interacting with customers, thinking about collaborating in a much more knowledge-based world. I do think that we're at a point of time where everybody and their brother and their son have defined Lean in their own way. And so we have a great deal of confusion about what Lean is and about what really differentiates Lean from the traditional consulting. And so I think there's a time also to restate the fundamentals. But in restating the fundamentals, we need to do it through different channels, through the social media channel in particular, and not necessarily through lots of weighty books that people may or may not read. So it's a much more experiential example-based, inspiration, checklist kind of way that we need to communicate the fundamentals of learning. And I think being able to support people and connect people with other people they might learn from and be supported by, as Jim was saying, I think that's absolutely a task for the Lean movement of the future.